So you think God needs your advice? Have you ever wondered why trying to help God out never works? Especially when you are behaving as if you're God, those times when you create or become a party in a relationship that God never intended. Many people create and enter these man-created relationships believing they won't cause any harm and that it won't lead to complications. But the truth is, these relationships can lead to serious consequences, although unintended. Nevertheless, they can have long-lasting results. Let's explore one powerful example from the Bible, Abraham and Hagar. You see, Abraham's relationship with Hagar was a Sarah trying to help God type of relationship. Let's go back and examine the origins of Sarah's attempt to help out God. According to the biblical account in Genesis, Sarah was motivated to give her handmaiden Hagar to Abraham because she had not been able to bear children herself. In ancient Near Eastern culture, it was customary for a wife who was barren to offer her servant or handmaid to her husband as a surrogate so that she could have children through her. Sarah hoped that by giving Hagar to Abraham, she might build a family through her. Genesis 16 verse 2. This act was prompted by her impatience and doubt, as she had grown weary of waiting for God's promise of a child to be fulfilled. Her impatience led to her thinking such action was necessary due to the number of years that passed since God promised Abraham a son. God first promised Abraham a son when Abraham was 75 years old, Genesis 12 verse 4, and the birth of Isaac, the promised son, occurred when Abraham was 100 years old, Genesis 21 verse 5. This means that 25 years passed from the time God made the promise until its fulfillment. However, Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham about 10 years after they had arrived in Canaan, Genesis 16, verse 3. So it was approximately a decade after the initial promise before Sarah took this step. But this relationship wasn't part of God's plan for him or anyone involved. From this union, a son named Ishmael was born. As Ishmael got older, Abraham began hoping for him to be the chosen one. In Genesis 17, verse 18, Abraham said, "Oh, that Ishmael might live before you." He wanted a position for Ishmael that God had reserved for another. Meanwhile, Sarah's feelings changed drastically over time. She felt jealousy and bitterness towards Hagar. This turmoil led Sarah to demand that Hagar and Ishmael be sent away. This event didn't just affect them, it altered the course of history. The descendants of Ishmael and Isaac became bitter rivals. This story teaches us that relationships that God didn't intend can lead to chaos. They can cause harm far beyond what we ever thought or imagined. So let's break down how these relationships can affect us. First, there are the emotional attachments that can form unexpectedly. Sarah had no idea that her husband would develop feeling for Ishmael deep enough that he wanted God to give the blessing reserved for Isaac to him. Also, it appears that something more may have developed between Hagar and Abraham. You see, what started as a relationship steeped in convenience can turn into deeper feelings, whether positive or negative. Next, consider the potential for jealousy and competition. Relationships not intended by God can change the dynamics within families and friendships. Hagar, who was Sarah's handmaiden, which implies a warm and harmonious relationship between them, became one full of animosity and eventually hatred. Sending them into the desert suggests she didn't care if Hagar and Ishmael lived or died. Lastly, entering into relationships that God didn't intend can affect future generations. Until this very day, the consequences of Ishmael being the firstborn, but Isaac receiving all the rights of the firstborn live on. Arabs follow the Old Testament through Ishmael, while the Jews follow the same book through Isaac. So you see, this conflict between these brothers, Arabs and Jews, is deeply rooted in Sarah's decision, help God. It's crucial to be mindful of who we become involved with. Remember, just because something feels right doesn't mean it is. Before entering a relationship not intended by God, ask yourself what could go wrong. Reflect on what could be the long-term effects of your choices. It may be unintended by God, but it doesn't mean it's
Oh, Lord,
carefree,
please
because
tell
we are
me what I'm
talking about
supposed to
real
do
people,
now.
human beings
I
who are
just don't
created
know.
in God's image. These situations can lead to unimaginable complications. The story of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar illustrates clearly how your choices matter and can extend beyond your immediate understanding. So think carefully about the paths you choose. If you enjoy studying the Bible and you found this message interesting, check out my channel at Let Us Break Bread Together. I have about 100 videos that deal with real-life Bible situations. Okay, so do me a favor and smash that like button, jam that subscribe. We out.